In April 2009, on the side of the Rzhevsky Highway in the Sverdlovsk region of Russia, a woman discovered the charred body of a 23-year-old man. It turned out to be a fourth-year student of the Ural Financial and Law Institute, who had gone missing 3 months earlier. The body was surrounded by tires and was almost completely burned. The investigators working on this case did not yet realize that they were on the trail of one of the most cunning and elusive maniacs in Russia, whose genius was combined with the madness of a sadist. You're watching the Strashnotai channel. Today we have an extremely inventive maniac whose crimes seem unreal and cinematic. It's hard to believe that they actually happened in real life. Yegor Nikolaevich Khabarov was born on May 18, 1979 in the city of Sverdlovsk, which is now Yekaterinburg. The times of his childhood and youth were prosperous. His family did not lack money. His father, Nikolai Khabarov, started a business in the 90s and achieved great success. The boy, however, grew up withdrawn and was not popular at school. His peers often bullied him for his short stature and frail physique. He also had mental health issues and was registered at a psychiatric clinic. At school, the boy became seriously interested in physics, won contests and Olympiads, and after graduation he entered the Ural State Technical University. He especially liked electrical engineering and everything related to experiments with electricity. After graduating from university in 2002, Yegor got a job as a master of the power section at the Novoberesovskaya CHP. Not for the money, he had enough of that, for the sake of knowledge and the opportunity to conduct his own experiments. At that time, Yegor's father bought him an apartment with an underground garage. Yegor lived in that apartment. He didn't use any illegal substances, didn't drink, wasn't aggressive, and he had a reputation for being quiet, calm, and always ready to help. Friends, acquaintances, and neighbors spoke positively about him, but when it came to relationships with women, things just didn't work out for him. Yegor was short, thin, went bald early, and was extremely unsociable, recalls his neighbor Sergei. You know, it was like he didn't really live here, he just came and went. Maybe he'd walk his dog for 5 minutes and that's it. A calm guy. I know he was an electrician at a power plant. And here's a quote from a forum. That's my former neighbor. I've ridden in the same car with him more than once, and we've just talked while standing around more than once. He always told me, if you have any problems, just let me know. No one suspected the man's secret hobbies, and besides electrical engineering, he also became interested in chemistry. And not just any chemistry, but explosives, their composition, methods of detonation, and the designs of explosive devices. At the beginning of 2003, Yegor Khabarov was arrested. The investigators accused him of counterfeiting 500 ruble bills. But the case was quickly hushed up, since for some reason the investigators couldn't prove it. Perhaps the intervention of an influential father played a role. The next arrest was in September 2004. This time, he was accused of making homemade bombs for sale. Investigators found out that Yegor made explosives using a mixture of ammonium nitrate, aluminum powder, and red lead as the charge. He searched for information about this on the internet and in specialized literature. Khabarov used a wire loop as the pull pin. The explosion occurred 4 minutes after pulling the pin. He planned to sell the explosive devices, and to prove that the device worked, he showed a video that he filmed at the Mikhailovskoye cemetery in the city of Yekaterinburg. His devices exploded just as well as military ammunition. There are only 2 video recordings of the experiments where Yegor detonated his time delay bombs, but there may have been many more. I'll leave additional materials in the Strashnoti Telegram channel. If you're interested, check it out, subscribe and watch. Nevertheless, Yegor Khabarov was not imprisoned again, because his father hired an entire team of lawyers. They filed a petition for a forensic medical examination at the Sverdlovsk Regional Clinical Psychiatric Hospital. The goal was to prove that he was not a criminal, but simply mentally ill. They retrieved his medical records from childhood and adolescence. They also confirmed his mental health issues and that he had undergone treatment courses. In the end, Khabarov was declared insane and sent for compulsory treatment. After several months of treatment in the village of Iset, Yegor was released. He felt completely untouchable and apparently began to develop a superiority complex, considering himself the center of the universe. From 2005 to 2008, Khabarov followed in his father's footsteps and decided to go into business. He acted as an intermediary in the sale of electrical products and industrial pipes on behalf of his father's company, and he was quite good at it. But his passion for experimentation never went away. The electrician continued to develop his professional skills, his skills in electrical engineering, and to invent all sorts of devices and instruments. But he had no intention of using them for harmless experiments. In 2008, Yegor Khabarov created a criminal group. He paints them a rosy picture of carefully planned attacks and rich loot. But the gang's crimes were unsuccessful. No loot, no prospects. The inexperienced accomplices botched several of his brilliant operations. Then he accused the members of his organization of cowardice and stupidity, after which he dismissed them all. Yegor didn't stop there. He got a job as a security guard in a private security company and formed a new group with the guys from there. There was strict discipline in Khabarov's organization. Despite his appearance and build, he commanded unquestioned authority. To supply his gang members with weapons, Yegor bought gas pistols and converted them to fire-live ammunition, and conducted shooting drills with novice criminals in the forest, where he set up several caches with ammunition. For the sake of secrecy, Khabarov did not introduce the members of the group to each other, so they did not know who else was in the gang, and the exact number of members remains unknown to this day. Yegor threatened his gang members with violence if they disobeyed, and also told them about poisons he had invented himself and about experiments he conducted with electricity in order to intimidate them. Needless to say, such a gang was nothing more than a toy for a vain and arrogant man. The gang chose their victims. It wasn't random. They looked for ads placed in newspapers or on the internet about buying computers and computer parts. In the summer of 2008, Yegor Khabarov planned a gruesome crime. The victim was Vlad Porfiryev, a 27-year-old computer repair technician. On the afternoon of June 8, Yegor Khabarov met with Porfiryev at the intersection of Lenina and Gagarina streets to offer him a small job. The accomplice was Sergei Kochnev, whom Yegor completely trusted. Kochnev Sergei Mikhailovich, born in 1982, height 197 cm, weight over 100 kilo, a big sullen man. An old light grey Hyundai drove up to the meeting place. A skinny little man with a prominent bald spot got out of the car. His black eyes were shining. A strange smile never left his face. But Vlad didn't pay any attention to it. Who cares what clients look like as long as they pay? The little man nodded politely and invited him to get into the car. Vlad sat down in the front seat. Behind him was a huge brute. He didn't say a word the whole way. They took Vlad to garage box number 36 on Botanikskaya Street, where Khabarov lived. Making sure no one saw them, the criminals attacked him, tied him up with tape, and put handcuffs on him. Yegor already had a terrible plan in his head. Khabarov decided to kill the young man using the voltage from a generator that he had built with his own hands. Through the rear left door of the car, the electrician connected the device's wires to Vlad's left arm and left leg. Then he closed all the doors and windows of the car. He plugged in the device and closed the circuit. That's how Vlad Porfiryev received a fatal electric shock. While Vlad was convulsing from the high voltage, Khabarov watched him with the same wide smile, rubbing his hands and impatiently dancing in place. Did you see how he was all twisted up?" he said to Kochnev enthusiastically. Kochnev didn't share the boss's euphoria. He turned away and looked at his watch. Soon the convulsions stopped and Khabarov turned off the switch. He carefully approached the door, opened it, and laughed joyfully when he smelled the scent of roasted meat. The body of the electrician and his partner were taken by car outside Yekaterinburg and dumped into a pit near the 17th kilometer of the Yekaterinburg-Serov highway. To get rid of the evidence, they set the body on fire after surrounding it with wooden crates. When the remains were discovered, forensic experts saw that the victim's palatine bone had been pierced by something sharp and that object had entered the brain. The victim's tongue was tightly clenched between the teeth and protruded by 1 centimeter. The feet were severely arched, the elbows were bent, and the hands were clenched near the chin. Investigators believe that Vlad remained alive for some time after being electrocuted, after which Khabarov and Kochnev struck him with a sharp object, finishing him off. From the computer specialist, Yegor Khabarov stole a cell phone and a laptop. Not a very rich haul, but Yegor was in a great mood. He handed Kochnev a stack of bills and said, "Your share, you don't need to count it." Kochnev quietly slipped the money into his jacket pocket. He understood perfectly well that Igor didn't commit this crime for profit. But money doesn't stink, all that matters is having money. The next proven victim of the electrician was the 20th, 23-year-old Anton, a 4th-year student at the Ural Institute of Finance and Law. Khabarov found Anton's online ad about selling computer parts, called him, and arranged a meeting. During the meeting, Khabarov convinced the victim to go to his garage, where Sergei Kochnev was already waiting. In the garage, during the conversation with Anton, Khabarov showed him a volunteer traffic police ID from Yekaterinburg and announced that Anton was suspected of stealing computers. Completely unprepared for such a turn of events, Anton became confused and did not offer any resistance to the criminals. Khabarov and Kochnev tied him up and put him in Igor's car, after which the electrician wrapped the victim's body with wires, one end of which he connected to 4 powerful capacitors. Anton suffered an electric shock and died. In general, this is how electrocution works. Death from a short high-voltage impulse does not always occur instantly. The duration of the impulse may not be enough to immediately stop the heart or cause fibrillation. During execution, the current flowed through the hands and body, avoiding the brain. That means the brain's activity wasn't paralyzed immediately and consciousness wasn't switched off right away either. A brief exposure to enormous voltage causes an instant explosion of small blood vessels, capillaries, and nerve fibers, since they have the highest conductivity in the tissues. The blood and lymph boil, the skin's epithelium cracks and burns. A powerful convulsive contraction of all muscles occurs simultaneously, which can lead to the rupture of fibers and tendons. This is what caused, according to the observer Sergei Kochnev, the car jolt and shake, but more on that later. Death in such a case could have occurred from shock caused by extreme pain and impaired heart function. During subsequent interrogations, the sadistic experimenter said that he was interested in watching how a person dies after an electric shock. That same night, Khabarov and Kochnev took the body to the outskirts of the city, where they threw it into a ditch near the road, surrounded it with car tires, and set it on fire. Anton's skeletal remains were discovered 3 months later, in April 2009. The identity was established by dental records confirmed by his mother, after which a criminal case was opened and an investigation began. The investigation into Anton's disappearance did not last long. Analyzing his phone calls and gathering information online helped reveal that Yegor Khabarov was one of the last people to see the young man before he disappeared. The electrician was detained on May 14, 2009 in his apartment on suspicion of committing the crime. He lived with his pregnant common-law wife, but that didn't stop him from keeping Mercury at home. Quote from the forum: "Neighbors and city residents. Khabarov lived at 58 Sovetskaya Street. The neighbors said that he had a sturdy door. When they came for him, the cops spent nearly an hour breaking down his door while he poured mercury off the balcony, which he had stored at home. Emergency services then spent considerable time treating the soil beneath the balcony. During the interrogation, Yegor Khabarov not only confessed to committing this crime, but also named his accomplice Sergei Kochnev. But for some reason, the electrician was unusually calm. "I'll admit to anything you can prove," he said casually and without emotion. These words led the investigator to think that there were actually more victims, but it could not be proven. The electrician said that the motive for committing the crime was homicidomania, an irresistible urge to take another person's life by violent means. He also claimed that he did not intend to stop there, and wanted to make such crimes a regular occurrence. The sadist experienced euphoria while watching the agony and convulsions of the victims as he shocked them with electricity. Sergei Kochnev insisted on his innocence during the interrogation. He stated that he was nearby during the killings, but did not take direct part in them. Under Article 36 of the Russian Criminal Code, accomplices aren't liable for the perpetrator's excesses. Perhaps the accomplice's original plan was to avoid liability for a crime committed by prior agreement in case of arrest by blaming everything on the insane Khabarov. An accomplice can always claim that he didn't even know that Yegor would take the victim's life. However, the accomplice could have played the role of psychological support for the electrician, since the small, skinny maniac would never have dared to commit his crimes without the backing of a strong 2-meter-tall young man. According to Sergei Kokhnev's accounts, during the crime, the electric shocks were so powerful that the cars where the victims were would start rocking violently. Kochnev confirmed Khabarov's words that after committing the acts, he experienced euphoria from what he saw. He said that after taking the life of Vlad Porfiryev, Yegor Khabarov fell into a state similar to being under the influence of substances and started hugging him. Kochnev said that both victims were taller than Khabarov, had solid builds, and could stand up for themselves. That's why Yegor doubted he could handle them in the water. He forced his partner to be present in the garage during the crimes. In addition to confessing to 2 crimes, Kochnev also gave investigators testimony about other incidents. He talked about an incident in the spring of 2008 when he and Yegor Khabarov came to a young man's apartment, having called in advance about an ad and having planned the attack and execution beforehand. Taking a revolver and a knife with them, the accomplices were confident of success, but the victim put up fierce resistance and the criminals fled. Electric assigned another attempted attack to members of his group. First, Yegor arrived at the crime scene himself to scout out the situation, and then he sent his gang members to the address. Apparently, the owner of the apartment sensed something was wrong and didn't open the door or talk to the gang members. After this incident, according to the investigation, Electric disbanded his group and started recruiting people who were more psychologically stable. Sergei Kochnev also admitted that Khabarov had suggested that he kidnap and rob a man whom Yegor had previously worked with at the CHP plant. The criminals watched the man for several weeks, tracked his movements, but were unable to carry out their plan. They were arrested. All the gang members from Khabarov's group after his arrest were listed as witnesses in the criminal case. They showed the officers the locations of several hiding places in the forest where Khabarov hid pistols. Khabarov's acquaintances described him as a man with excessive pride, arrogance, and fierce contempt for society. During the interrogations, Yegor Khabarov confirmed that despotism was one of his traits and told the investigators about his perverse theory. According to him, people are divided into ordinary people who just go with the flow and people who are allowed to do anything. Well, literally wizards and muggles, I guess, if you know what I mean. Of course, Khabarov considered himself to be in the second category. According to investigators, Khabarov had his own philosophy. He denied the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," considering himself a person who could take other people's lives. During interrogations, Khabarov said that he was interested in watching how a person dies after being struck by electricity, what happens to their tissues and organs. Psychotherapist and psychiatrist Georgy Amusin also believes that Khabarov derived pleasure from watching the suffering of his victims. He notes that in Soviet times, such people were rarely released from closed medical institutions. Specialists understood that pathological structures and personalities remained the same, but unfortunately. Among the personal belongings and documents of Yegor Khabarov, a volunteer traffic police assistant ID from Angy with records of duty in the spring of 2009 was found, as well as a driver's license. During the inspection, they found out that Khabarov's ID was listed in all official databases of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, was not fake, and was indeed issued to him in 2004. Investigators will later determine who issued it and why. A mental illness is a medical contraindication for driving a vehicle, but for some reason, Yegor Khabarov was not deprived of his driver's license. The case caused public outcry, which is why the prosecutor's office of the Verkhotursky district launched a separate investigation against a number of officials to determine the circumstances under which Khabarov, who was officially declared insane, managed to obtain a traffic police volunteer ID and was not deprived of his driver's license. But the results of the investigation were never disclosed to the general public. It's no secret that Yegor Khabarov's father is an influential man. There were many rumors that the certificate of insanity was bought, and the case in 2004 was hushed up. The investigation acknowledged that Khabarov's level of preparation for committing crimes was very high. After his arrest, during a search of his apartment and garage, investigators found several homemade devices and portable radios that were tuned to frequencies used by the police for radio communications. From 4 powerful electric capacitors, Khabarov assembled a battery which he used to torture Anton. To keep the capacitor operational, Khabarov assembled a portable power station which served as a high-voltage source for charging the battery. Khabarov planned to set up ambushes for motorists on one of the roads leading to Yekaterinburg and then attack them. For this purpose, he bought a hidden video camera and embedded it in the sole of a military boot. He planned to place this camera-equipped boot on the side of the highway and watch all the passing cars while sitting at home at his computer. To stop the cars of potential victims, Khabarov assembled microwave generators from transistors, tubes, coils, a Tesla coil, a magnetron from a microwave oven. The rays from it, passing through gaps, and the rubber seal of the car's hood would disable the electronics and stall the engine. But in the end, he was not able to create a working version of the device. To conduct various experiments, Khabarov assembled a small high-frequency generator in his apartment. With its help, he planned to improve his skills in causing explosions of vessels and containers filled with liquid by applying bare wires under voltage to them and selecting a specific frequency. He also conducted experiments to create a neuro-optical system that, through a flash of light, affected the area of the brain responsible for storing memories. To do this, Yegor assembled a device using the body of a Soviet photoflash unit Luch-M. After his arrest, Khabarov told investigators that his invention erased the subject's memories and short-term memory, but no evidence of this was found. Recollections of the investigator on the electrician case Yuri Yelantsev. I remember that he had some influential relative, and he himself was far from poor. He behaved confidently and played the role of a scientist, a researcher. In fact, he was very smart and intellectually developed, I would even say brilliant. He also wanted to kill with electricity. He was remembered for his unconventional ideas. One of his inventions was an electrified car floor mat. He planned to stop a car on the highway, show some credentials to the driver, make him sit in the front seat, and then take his life using this mat. It remains unclear whether Yegor Khabarov actually believed that the other instruments of death really had the properties he attributed to them. Or was it a planned simulation to make himself look insane in case he got caught? Investigators found plenty of evidence indicating that at least 7 people had fallen victim. Other disappearances and deaths were no longer in our jurisdiction, so we couldn't handle those cases. Initially, Khabarov was suspected of 5 more fatal crimes. Some evidence pointed to this, but only 2 were proven. Honestly, I'm surprised they let him go. We all expected him to stay in the hospital for a long time. Yegor Khabarov highlighted several private ads in the newspaper about buying computers and components. Some of them were among the missing. Among the devices he made, they found a power supply for a Marx generator, which could serve as a generator for charging a capacitor bank. Based on the diaries and notes he made, the investigation established that Yegor had been working on the design of a high-voltage Marx generator with an output voltage of about 1 million volts since 2006. According to the investigation, the ultimate goal of his experiments with electricity was the complete destruction of the corpse. According to the expert's conclusion, Yegor Khabarov's generator produced an output voltage of only about 30 kilowatts. The investigation was unable to prove the electrician's involvement in the cases of other people's disappearances and deaths, and he himself refused to give a confession. During the interrogations, Khabarov referred to an article of the Russian Constitution that allows him not to testify against himself. That's Article 51 of the Constitution, a very useful one. And he adhered to the presumption of innocence, stating that he would bear criminal responsibility only for those crimes that the investigation could prove. In the end, he and Sergei Kochnev were charged with committing an assault involving robbery, attempted kidnapping, and 2 counts of homicide. During the investigation of the crimes, at the request of Khabarov's lawyer, he was again sent to the Sverdlovsk Regional Clinical Psychiatric Hospital, where a forensic psychiatric examination was conducted. The electrician was found to be insane. In 2010, the Kirovsky District Court released him from criminal liability and ordered compulsory treatment with a course of inpatient care under intensive supervision. In January 2012, Yegor Khabarov was transferred to Moscow and placed in the Federal Medical Research Center for Psychiatry and Narcology, where another forensic psychiatric examination was conducted. As a result, he was again found to be insane, after which the Kirovsky District Court once more sent him to inpatient care under intensive supervision. In May 2012, the psychiatrist, head of the department at that very hospital, at the request of Khabarov's lawyer, spoke out against placing Yegor in inpatient care under intensive supervision. After that, his lawyers filed a cassation appeal against the decision of the Kirovsky District Court. On July 20, 2012, the appeal was rejected and the court's ruling regarding Yegor Khabarov was left unchanged. Sergei Kochnev was found guilty of being an accomplice in the crime against Anton and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. For his involvement in the crime against Vlad Porfiryev, Kochnev was not convicted because the statute of limitations had expired. If you want even more videos, go to Boosty if you're from Russia and Patreon if you're not from Russia. There you'll find exclusive videos that aren't on YouTube. The links are below the video. Many people still believe that Maniac Khabarov was only pretending to be insane. There are just too many calculated details in his case. Yegor pretended to be Dmitry or Igor, changed SIM cards, registered to different names, carefully covered his tracks, and maintained secrecy. He was registered on the E1 website under the nickname Igoras. There he was looking to meet people and did not post ads about selling cell phones. There are either no women among the electrician's victims or we don't know about them, so any woman who went missing in Sverdlovsk Oblast at that time could be a victim of the electrician's serial killer. But now 10 years have passed and the maniacs have been forgotten. But one day, licensed security guard Alexander, a former employee of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, was transferred to a new post at the Apelsin shopping center in Yekaterinburg on Blyukera Street 39. He quickly became friends with his new colleagues, but one of the security guards seemed overly suspicious to Alexander. The man worked with him for several days before deciding to ask him directly. Alexander recalls it like this: I remembered there was an investigation about a repairman or an electrician. Professional memory is a strange thing. I remember everything from my previous job down to the smallest details. Even how some criminals' clothes rustled, what they smelled like, what shape the blade of their knife was, and so on. One time we were sitting together, I looked at him from all sides and realized it was him, but I thought he should have been put in jail, so I said to him, "You're an electrician, right?" That really shocked him. He was visibly scared. He said, "No, I have a different profession." "But your nickname is Electrician," I said. He confirmed it. He said that he had undergone the necessary treatment and that it was all in the past. After that, he got up and left. Alexander recognized the former serial killer not only by his appearance, but also by the conversations he started and by his strange tendencies. Alexander, again, recalls it like this. He talked about his inventions, how you can make a stun gun out of a scooter battery, that you can take a person's life with electricity during a thunderstorm and blame it all on lightning. He said, "Cops are dumb, they'll blame the thunderstorm." I worked with him for a few days. He's very well read, takes care of his health, but his interests are quite specific. Weapons, poisons, electricity. He talked about these devices he invented that can generate a lightning discharge. Once he noticed a dent on my car and said, "I have a garage, I can call some guys, they'll come over and fix it. They'll do it for free." It seemed suspicious to me. I replied, "Well, it doesn't really bother me." Whether he wanted to get rid of an unwanted witness to his dark past, or really wanted to help, remains unknown. I think that's fortunate for Alexander. The electrician didn't deny it, but he honestly admitted to my colleague that it was all in the past, he had undergone compulsory treatment and was now free. He later admitted, Alexander recalls, that from the very beginning he was afraid of me because I worked in law enforcement and could recognize him. I was honestly shocked that he got away with such terrible crimes. It seems like you've already seen everything in life and nothing can surprise you anymore, but that's not true. Something unusual like this always comes up. My colleagues told me there was nothing they could do. He was declared insane by the court. Life isn't like it is on TV. Alexander told the management that he recognized the maniac. The electrician was fired, but it also backfired on Alexander himself. It's not exactly known whether the former Ministry of Internal Affairs employee was fired, left on his own, or was forced out, but neither Alexander nor the electrician work at this shopping center anymore. The shopping center itself confirmed that Yegor Khabarov worked a couple of shifts with them during his probation period, but he didn't pass it, and they let him go.
Indeed, that was the case. The person worked there for literally just a few days, according to my information. As soon as these background checks started, it was discovered that he had, well, such convictions. Yes, I mean criminal convictions. Naturally, after that, they said, "Young man, sorry, you're not a good fit for us. Please leave. We're not ready to continue working with you."
In general, Khabarov is a person who initially feels weak in the regular social system. He is not fully integrated into it, not accepted, not recognized, not in demand in the way he would like, but he has resources, intelligence, and he begins to build his identity not through people, but through knowledge and control over his environment. Electricity, devices, and circuits are not just an interest for him, but a way to feel respect, to feel power. There, everything obeys the laws, there you can control things, and there is no chaos of human relationships in which he loses. Over time, this interest begins to shift. It's no longer enough for him to just understand and create. He needs to apply this to a person, to test how it works on a living subject. And this is where curiosity without empathy arises. He doesn't feel for the other person, he observes like a researcher, but without any limitations. Another person's body is a system to him, through which current flows, something he can influence to see the result. At the same time, he has a clear internal theory that justifies everything that's happening. He divides people into ordinary people and those he sees as fair game. This is a classic construct, but in his case, it's not just an idea, it's more like the foundation of his well-being, his self-perception, his reality. He doesn't doubt his right, he doesn't explain to himself why it's acceptable, for him it's simply a fact. That's where the cold calm comes from. He doesn't hide his emotions. In the usual sense, he doesn't really have them. There's interest, excitement, satisfaction from the result, but there's no guilt, fear, or doubt. He doesn't act impulsively. On the contrary, he complicates things, comes up with schemes, devices, and methods. The result isn't the only thing that matters to him, but also the path to it. This gives what's happening additional meaning. He doesn't just do things mindlessly, he develops them. Thus, he is closer not to the efficient type, but to the constructive type, though with a distortion of the goal. He builds a system in which violence is part of the experiment. The accomplice in this story is a separate topic. Koknev, apparently, is a person with a low level of internal scholarship. He doesn't initiate, doesn't invent, and doesn't experience euphoria either. But at the same time, he doesn't stop it either. External logic is important to him. There is a strong, confident person who tells him what to do, and there is a benefit, and that's enough. He distances himself from what's happening inside him, not in the sense of I'm against it, but in the sense of this isn't really me. He can stand nearby, see everything, but not experience it as his own action. This is a typical splitting of responsibility, physically present but psychologically distancing himself. At the same time, he is still involved. His presence is a support, without which it would be much harder for the main figure to act. He provides a sense of safety and control, even if he doesn't fully realize his own role. And it's also interesting that Khabarov doesn't just act, he wants to scale things up. Individual actions aren't enough for him. He thinks globally, in series, schemes, and systems. This shows that crime is part of his project, a part of his very life, that makes him extremely dangerous. This isn't a person who just snapped, but someone who has built destruction into his worldview, thought it through, justified it, and started developing it like any other activity. Right now, we don't know where the electrician lives or works, but we're sure that the maniac suspected of 7 crimes is still at large, and no one around him can be safe. And the grey Hyundai is still registered to him and keeps racking up fines while out on jobs. And what do you think about this case? Leave your comments, like or dislike, and watch other videos on the channel. They're available right now in the cards.